So, this is a topic that I have been studying since I believe I was 10. Yes, I was one of those girls that got interested in researching serial killers at a very young age. But this case study specifically is on a form of addiction. Now, when you think about the word addiction itself, it usually comes with the thought of drugs, alcohol, gambling, maybe sex. But mine is on the addiction that Samuel Little had to serial killing. Gillian Mullen's investigation into Samuel Little was right before he had died in 2020. Many of his victims, including himself, experienced different forms of addiction, poverty, trauma, a lot of family dysfunction, and social marginalization. The addiction in itself. So, the main addiction that is seen in this case, again, isn't the traditional example of addiction. It's serial killing. It's not something that you think of when you hear the word addiction. But yet, it is one of the least talked about and one of the most deadly. The primary addiction of serial killing, it falls along the lines of the traditional sense of addiction. You have the tolerance and escalation, the obsessive fantasies, and impulse control. In Samuel Little's case, his escalation went from doing petty crimes, landing him in juvie, to full-blown murder. But his obsession and his fantasies that he had about his victims is disturbingly incredible. And his impulse control. Frankly, the man had none. He, I don't even think he had it in his dictionary in his head. His childhood. He was born in 1940s to, frankly, a very mentally unwell teenage mother who was also known drug user and prostitute. He had a really rough childhood growing up. Even before he was born, his mother had tried to kill him in the womb by having one of her friends wrap a rope around her stomach and pull it tight. She was also known to drink these poisonous concoctions. The origin of said concoction, we don't know what was in it, and tried to smother him in his crib when he was a baby. From a family systems perspective, it was riddled with warning signs and risk factors such as parental abandonment. He was abandoned by his mom over and over and over again throughout his childhood and was left with his grandmother. He had lack of stable attachment figures. Like I said, he was abandoned over and over by his mom. She would get clean, she would take him back, and then start using again, he'd go back to his grandmother's. It was a never ending cycle. He never knew his father. He had inconsistent caregiving. He was always hopping from one place to another, whether that was living with his mom, his grandmother, or juvie. He had inconsistent caregiving. Again, his mom was a known drug user and prostitute. He had early behavioral problems in and out of juvie. Limited supervision and emotional support. He basically grew up on the streets. He was born June 7th, 1940. His arrest in 2012 was on drug charges. And when they took his DNA, he was linked to several different murders. Legally speaking, he was convicted of 8, but has confessed to over 98 murders, all between the years of 1970 and 2005. He died December 20th, 2020. And he had an amazingly prolific photographic memory, like to the detail of what they were wearing, where he was, what they looked like. He would take these mental images of his victims and draw them out so the police and FBI could cross match them between his drawings and the missing person reports. This is a timeline of all his arrests. You can see it started very, very early in 1966, and its last arrest being in 2012. But this was his killing career, I guess you could call it. His victims. These are all drawings that he had done of his victims, and more than half of them have never been positively ID'd. His known victims that they found were Annie Louise Stewart, Mary Jo Payton, Rose Evans, Denise Christine Brothers, Clara Bourdon, Yvonne Pless. Now, the ones they have not confirmed yet, but are suspect him of is Ruby Lane, Patricia Parker, Zelina Jones, Mary Bursley, Leona Bryant, and Friadana Smith. The theory is helpful in understanding this sadly horrific family system. Attachment theory, which, let me back a little more about him, is his family roles. In this was he was the last child. He was deemed a problem child, which he was given. He was. He was very emotionally disconnected, lack of empathy. Some people described him as a sociopath, which I would not be surprised if he was. He was also the scapegoat. Well, he engaged in theft and delinquent behavior. His family blamed everything that went wrong on him. He was very neglected as a child and became involved in the justice system way before he reached the age of 18, which is considered adulthood. Now, given all of this background, attachment theory, which was developed by John Bowlby, would best fit Samuel Little, in my opinion, because he was repeatedly abandoned by his mother. He had lack of stable parental control, and early interferences and attachment may have been contributed to the lack of trust, empathy, emotional regulation, and establishing healthy relationships as a small child. But yet, social learning theory would also fit his demographics, which was developed by Albert Bandura. And since he was repeatedly exposed to his mother's drug use and witnessing her engage in prostitution, he may have learned from a very, very, very young age that the mistreatment of women was normal and something that wasn't wrong, when in fact it's the exact opposite. Interventions that could be utilized. Cognitive behavioral therapy would have been a really good one when he was a child. It would give him something to go on and to explore. Now, would it have worked? I don't know. it wasn't offered to him. And it would have given him maybe, now I don't know, never met the man before he died, a chance to live somewhat a normal life and be like his peers. But sadly, he didn't. And it could have helped replace those obsessive, compulsive fantasies that he had about women. Sources. And that's it for my presentation. I hope you enjoyed. Again, this is a case that I have been researching since I was 10. And this is the overview. There's so much more that you can read about and cover. Some of my sources are here. A really good one is the Marshall Project. It tells from both perspectives of the families of his victims and the police and investigators that worked on his case, along with reporters and statistics.